Hello, and welcome to the Museum Futures Summit. This event aims to celebrate and learn from over decades worth of Heritage Fund Skills for the Future programming delivered by cultural heritage organisations across the UK, including the British Museum. We will also learn from other organisations that are creating innovative paid entry routes into the heritage sector. The British Museum's first Skills for the Future traineeship started 11 years ago. Since then, we have collaborated with over 30 partner museums to host 70 trainees. Thanks to the dedicated support of numerous museum colleagues across the UK, these 70 trainees have acquired knowledge and developed skills in various disciplines within the heritage sector. These programs came into being thanks to the foresight of the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Their commitment to the future of our museums should be commended. We are most grateful for their support in making Museum Futures and this summit possible. We are also grateful to the VIVMA Foundation for their support of the Museum Futures Summit as part of the British Museum's National Knowledge Share Programme. Thank you all for joining us.
Hello, I am Melissa Strauss and I'm from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. It's a real pleasure to be here today to celebrate over a decade of the Skills for the Future programme. Over 10 years, the Heritage Fund invested over £57 million in 111 Skills for the Future projects, involving thousands of trainees. I'd like to thank the British Museum for bringing us together to reflect on the positive changes these projects delivered for both heritage organisations and people. The projects developed a wide range of approaches to work-based training and equipped people with the skills and experience to pursue a career in heritage. They've addressed skills shortages and gaps in the sector and increased the capacity of museums and heritage organisations to deliver training and provide paid entry routes into the workforce. Over the years, we've also heard many stories about the positive impact on individual trainees. Really importantly, Skills for the Future also sought to increase the diversity of people entering the sector, and we need to provide more opportunities to bring a wider range of people and perspectives to work in heritage. Well-supported traineeships and apprenticeships can help us to do this. The Skills for the Future programme launched in 2009 in response to the recession. We wanted to help heritage organisations to recover from the financial crisis. While Skills for the Future projects are all now coming to an end, we're talking about recovery again. And we see skills development and diversifying the sector as key to its resilience. The Heritage Fund have continued to fund projects that build skills, create opportunities for young people, and increase inclusion. I'm sure today will inspire a lot of ideas about how to support more skills development for a wider range of people for now and the future.
Over the past 3 years, the Museum Futures program has worked with 21 organisations across the UK to host 25 extraordinary Museum Futures trainees. Their paid year-long placements were designed to be actually entry-level and focused on in-demand digital skills related to museum collections. Trainees have benefited from on-the-job learning and a cultural heritage diploma. I'm proud to say that over half of the trainees continue to work in museums and heritage. In turn, host organisations, including the British Museum, have benefited from the increased capacity, digital confidence, and new perspectives that trainees provide. As Museum Futures comes to an end, we have been evaluating the successes and challenges, and we will share the full report. But honestly, the outcomes of an individual short-term funded project are limited, a drop in the bucket, really. Good thing there are so many people doing work to increase access to careers in culture. This summit provides an opportunity to share some of this work across the UK and to honestly discuss the possibilities and limitations. We have an extraordinary lineup of speakers, and we have given them the challenge of sharing in very short presentations their special insights. Our hope is that these presentations will be the start of longer conversations and inspire collaboration. I want to share our outcomes, which may be a drop in the bucket, with yours and make a splash. Thank you all for participating, and special thanks to the recent trainees, apprentices, Kickstarters, and young producers, because you do represent Museum's futures.
Hello and welcome to the first session of the Museum Future Summit. I'm Abdul Khan, your host for today. This session is called Building on Traineeships, Sustainable Embedded Change. First up, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Errol Francis, Artistic Director and CEO at Culture and, discussing their Who's Heritage Research Residencies and the new Museum School Advanced Programme. Next, we'll hear about the Cultural Ambition Programme from Di Price, Head of Museum at National Museum Wales, Gary Williams, Head of Arts and Cultural Programmes in the Welsh Government, and Joe Esposti, Cultural Ambition Project Coordinator at Creative and Cultural Skills. Third, we have Phil Pollard, Heritage Apprenticeships Manager at Historic England, discussing a model for employability in the historic environment and beyond. A live Q&A with speakers will follow the presentations, so please use the Q&A function in Zoom to send through your questions. For now, I'll hand over to our first speaker, Dr. Errol Francis.
Hello, everyone. I'm Errol Francis. I'm Director of Culture and I'm going to be talking about the new Museum School Advanced Programme. It's a programme that aims to create graduates in museum studies that reflect the UK's rich diversity. All Culture and graduates reflect the diversity of the UK. 75% of our trainees are from a BAME background, 25% identify as male, 1/3 as disabled, and 69% are aged 18 to 24, with the cohort ages ranging from 19 to 28. And trainees disclose a range of religions and beliefs. 30% identify as being part of the LGBTQ community, and appointed trainees are from a range of socio-economic backgrounds, with 38% having been the first of their family to attend university and 25% being non-graduates. So we are launching the new Museum School Advanced Programme as a key objective in the Culture and Black Lives Matter Charter, which we published in the summer of 2020. We aim to address the lack of career progression for our graduates. And we also want to provide confidence to our heritage partners to embrace change and to nurture diverse leadership in the heritage sector and expand audiences. We are putting together an exciting alliance of partners and participants working towards inclusive transformational change in the heritage sector. The partnership is between Culture and the University of Leicester Research Centre for Museums and Galleries, and a range of cultural sector partners from all over the UK. And the programme is supported by the Esme Fairbairn Foundation. The aims of the new Museum School programme are to nurture the brightest, most promising, diverse talent as potential leaders in the arts and heritage workforce. We aim to provide a distance learning model that's flexible and modular and provides postgraduate qualifications that allow professionals to continue their full-time employment within the arts and heritage sector whilst studying. We want to ensure an accessible recruitment process for learners with wide-ranging backgrounds and expand the expert knowledge of diverse arts and heritage professionals across a range of disciplines. The aims of the programme are to diversify the arts and heritage workforce by supporting participants to advance their careers. We want to build a self-sustaining peer network by brokering one-to-one mentoring and networking opportunities. We want to increase professional accreditation for new Museum School alumni through opening up routes to associateship of, for example, the Museums Association, and to make a real step change in how heritage is interpreted and to also affect and expand audiences. We want to change and improve the UK's arts and heritage organisations in terms of their workforce, recruitment and retention of staff from diverse backgrounds. Programme participants will access a high-quality postgraduate programme with at least 85% of the funding covered for a PG DIP, MA or MSc pathway. Students will undertake a research-based placement, which we call a project in practice, with the partner organisation, which can be online or on-site in view of the public health situation that we've been facing. And the students will join a network of participants and partners committed to inclusive transformation. They will receive tailored mentoring and professional development support. For cultural sector partners, they will provide sponsorship of £5,000 per participant, as well as mentoring and support. They will host a programme participant for their project in practice module remotely or on site. The partner organisation will benefit from a unique piece of research undertaken by the participant, and there will be opportunity to be part of a new national initiative to diversify the arts and heritage workforce in the UK and support inclusive transformational change across the sector. There will be access to and involvement in an annual inclusive transformational symposium focused on inclusion in cultural settings and processes of organisational change. What we want to achieve is high quality learning experience for the student in an ethical environment in which participants can progress their studies and careers. We want to support partners in their internal conversations and programs of inclusive transformation. We want to foster openness and collective approach to programs of change. We are supporting partners to implement the Black Lives Matter Charter and work with our partners on the Inclusive Transformational Network and Symposium. So I'd like to share with you a programme that we co-curated with the Wellcome Collection in 2019, and it was called Cyborgs. And this was a collaboration with Culture and it was co-curated with alumni from our New Museum School programme. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is to demonstrate the impact that a diverse workforce can have in a curatorial sense on the design of a programme, and also the impact that it might have on attracting a wider, more diverse audience. And this programme was really addressing quite an urgent scientific and technological question about the difference between humans, animals and machines, and how we imagine the future. And the way we did this was by engaging a really diverse range of artists, academics, technologists, scientists and performers to actually interrogate this problem and these questions with audiences. And it was an exciting evening of debate and engagement with audiences about the way we imagine the future. And I really don't think that this could have been done with anyone else but the group, in this way, but the group that we actually worked with. And you can actually go on the Wellcome website and see all the different performances and events that were in the programme in 2019. The slide you're looking at is a performance by the trans artist Rebecca Ubuntu, who did an amazing performance on questing. So that's one example of how a diverse workforce can have a really creative impact on a public programme. The other example I'd like to share with you is another programme that our trainees curated with the National Trust, and it was called the India Club. It was in 2020, and it was based at a really interesting but not so well-known heritage site called the India Club, which is a kind of restaurant and social club in the Strand in London. And it really did open up a way of looking at heritage in a more inclusive way. And the collaboration with the National Trust was really exciting and critical. And our trainee looked at the rich heritage of this space in London, which is not just a restaurant, but it's a meeting place for Indian nationalists and politicians and activists that goes back to just after the Second World War. And what the exhibition did was to revisit this rich heritage of all the people who came to the India Club and the sorts of events that took place at the India Club, and really what this means for Indian identity. And it also, with this collaboration with the National Trust, it expanded our idea of what a heritage site is. You know, most of us know the National Trust as being an organisation that takes care of architectural sites, country houses and gardens, but yet this is a site in the middle of London. It's a small restaurant at the top of a building, and we were really focusing on this as a key part of our heritage to be celebrated and preserved. So I hope that those two examples you will find inspirational and exciting. Thank you very much for listening.
Hello, my name is Jo Esposti. I work for Creative and Cultural Skills as Cultural Ambition Project Coordinator, where I've led on the delivery of the project since 2018. If you don't know us, Creative and Cultural Skills, or CC Skills, is a UK-wide agency working to create a fair, skilled and accessible cultural sector. At the heart of our mission is to ensure that young people furthest from the workplace have access to developing successful careers across the cultural industries. I'll start with a brief background on where the Cultural Ambition programme came from. Back in 2014, Baroness Kay Andrews, OBE, published a report for Welsh Government that explained how the thriving arts, culture and heritage sectors could contribute more effectively to reducing poverty and raising ambition across Wales. Based on findings in the report and after consultation with lead partners that revealed a lack of inclusive recruitment and workforce development practices, we created the Cultural Ambition Project, a training programme focused on young people furthest from the workplace to develop the skills required for entry-level roles within the cultural heritage sector in Wales. Now in its fourth year, Cultural Ambition has provided over 30 young people with long-term paid work placements across a network of leading partners, including museums, castles, archives, libraries and cultural heritage sites throughout Wales, as well as the opportunity to gain an NVQ Level 2 cultural heritage qualification delivered by Cardiff and Vale College. Giving 30 young people work experience and training over 4 years might sound like touch, but I promise you it's not. The strength of Cultural Ambition has been its depth, longevity, and the commitment of those involved, which has allowed us to grow, learn, adapt, test, and respond to the needs of everyone involved. Each young person we have worked with has come to us with their own struggles, a lack of confidence or direction, additional learning needs, and poor mental health being the most common examples. The trainees require one-to-one support from both myself, the college assessor, and their site mentors in order for them to fully engage and develop throughout their time on the project. At the end of their placements, our trainees all receive employability training to support them in their next steps, and we often hear from our alumni about what they're up to. Some are still working or volunteering in the sector, some have taken their transferable skills gained during the programme and sought jobs in other sectors, and others have been able to develop the interest ignited during their traineeship and are studying at university. We'd love to be able to continue to provide the same level of one-to-one support to our trainee alumni once they leave the programme, to match them with vocational training or help them apply for jobs. But the fact is the capacity and resources for this aftercare doesn't exist at the moment. There's also a lack of vocational training options across the sector in Wales. So even for those who are interested in continuing on to an apprenticeship, there are few to apply for. We may have seen a shift in attitudes and approaches to working with young people, but we know there's still a long way to go in terms of creating real and sustainable opportunities. It's something we're continuing to develop and advocate for at CC Skills. We run a sector support programme of training and resources to support employers to understand inclusive workforce development practices such as apprenticeships. It's been such a pleasure to work with the young people and the organisations over the last 4 years, and I've personally learned a lot about the challenges young people furthest from the workplace face. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue to learn from this project and support the sector in Wales to continue creating more work-based learning opportunities for the most diverse pool of young talent.
Bore da pawb. I'm Gary Williams. I'm the Head of Arts and Cultural Programmes within the Culture Department in the Welsh Government. I started in the Cultural Division, specifically on the Fusion programme in late 2018. For those of you that aren't aware of that programme, Fusion was created in 2015 in response to Baroness Kay Andrews' report into the culture and poverty. Its broad aim was to try and break the cycle of poverty through providing opportunity through culture and cultural venues. One of the components of the programme, and probably my personal favourite, is the Cultural Ambitions programme run by CC Skills. Whilst the Fusion programme itself has a number of different strands to it, and which all do an equally amazing job, and do make a real difference to people. The Cultural Ambitions programme really stood out to me when I was getting to grips with the new role. The thing that impressed me was how focused the programme was. Small cohorts with dedicated support and regular contact throughout, catering for each individual's challenges, even through the pandemic. They've risen to the challenge. It really is transformative, seeing the impact on individuals, their perspectives, and how their aspirations are transformed. I recall meeting a number of individuals who, before attending, had little or no interest in working or going on to further education. After being through the programme, they ended up getting employed or going on to university to take degrees. It really makes me proud to have been part of the programme. And whilst the lens has definitely shone on the individuals, there's also an underlying benefit for the organisations taking these individuals on. By lifting the lid on cultural venues, showcasing the amazing work of the sector and how varied and interesting a career in it can be. They also bring in new employees, new skills, and embracing technology, which has been a historic issue for the sector. As the Cultural Ambition programme draws to a close, I personally would like to see a successor programme being developed, and hopefully on a more permanent footing. I definitely think that it's worth exploring the potential for cultural apprenticeships and the right qualifications to support that. Finally, I'd like to say that the Cultural Ambitions programme has simply been brilliant. It really has. I want to say a huge thank you to the team at CC Skills, the venues, and last but not least, those taking part in it. It's definitely given me food for thought. Diolch.
Bore da. My name is Di Price and I'm the head of Big Pit in the National Roman Legion Museum, part of Amgueddfa Cymru National Museum Wales. As part of the Cultural Ambition project, we've hosted a series of 6-month placements at Big Pit National Coal Museum over the last few years. As you would expect, or certainly hope, the impact of these placements on the young people taking part was clear, and Joe and Gary have already highlighted this. From learning new skills to improving their confidence, this was a high impact set of placements for the individuals involved. What you might not expect is how much the impact has been clear for the staff working at Big Pit, particularly the mentors and the staff who are involved directly with the young people. As an industrial museum whose staff almost exclusively come from the mining industry, the culture at Big Pit has always tended to be traditional. In welcoming these placements, staff quickly identified that they would need to learn new ways of working. As a direct consequence, for example, many staff signed up for training aimed to support these placements, including a session with Stonewall relating to LGBTQ+, and understanding how to relate into work colleagues in a different way. Whilst our own apprentice scheme at Big Pit has started to challenge the traditional working culture, the Cultural Ambition placements brought a really new element to this. Staff responded well to a new approach, and this has had an impact on both our recruitment processes and on induction training for new staff. The existing induction training and procedures we have as a working mine are very rigorous, as you might expect. So a big change for our staff has been the approach and how we share that process with people. Meaningful collaboration has to take time. And in developing processes of working with our Cultural Ambition placements to ensure that the needs both of the young people and of our staff have met, we've been able to use this time effectively. Interaction on site, whether that be placements, apprentices, or existing staff, has been more collaborative and with better understanding that working methods need to be adapted to make them more inclusive to fit a modern museum. The disruption caused by the coronavirus pandemic has further impacted on this, but as always, this creates new opportunities. Whilst we weren't able to arrange time on site for the last round of placements, we were able to participate in digital masterclasses. If this idea had been suggested to some of my colleagues before the Cultural Ambition placements, I'm not sure how positively it would have been received. To be blunt, some of the conversations around this have not been easy, and addressing some of the issues is painful, but it is necessary. Whether it's down to unconscious bias or simply what you might call traditional views, the result of these conversations have put us in a better place. Ultimately, Amgueddfa Cymru Museum Wales's 2030 strategy is to work together to challenge expectations and to do things differently so that everyone feels that Amgueddfa Cymru is for them. The Cultural Ambition placements have already allowed us to take huge strides towards this at Big Pit. It's also changed the range of opportunities we're working towards. As an example, we're currently, right now, in a process of setting up a volunteer placement with an Afghan refugee who is looking to give back to the community of Blaenavon that's welcomed him and his family whilst developing his skills for future job opportunities in the heritage industry. The placements have opened up the mindset, the potential of such a role in Big Pit. It's a direct result of this different way of working. In many ways, the experience of working in the cultural ambition placements has accelerated a process that Big Pit needed in order to make its workforce sustainable. Indeed, one of these placements has already made it clear that her own personal career ambition is to work in Big Pit. She's doing everything she can to make this a reality. Delivering these placements is becoming an increasing challenge. The increasing demands of the sector and new ways of working, along with the fact that Big Pit has critical time skills and infrastructure succession plans, mean that these placements are difficult to dedicate time to, but they are needed. After all, nothing that was worthwhile was ever easy. That concludes the cultural ambition presentations from this session. Diolch yn fawr am gwrando. Thank you very much for listening.
Hello, my name is Phil Pollard. I work in the Sector Resilience and Skills team at Historic England. For those of you who don't know, Historic England is the government's advisor on the historic environment, and our role is to champion and protect England's historic places. We also have a remit around leading and helping to develop the heritage sector. That's the organisations and the people who are needed in order to protect and champion the historic environment. So in my team, we have a specific interest in the sector workforce and the skills of that workforce. What skills particularly are we concerned with? Well, there's a breadth of skills in the sector that we're concerned with. I've tried to break these down into kind of large categories: archaeology, conservation, and that's primarily object-based conservation; historic environment advice, that's particularly to do with the planning system; heritage construction, that's those people who actually work on historic buildings, maintaining and adapting them; and craft skills, particular crafts that relate to construction but are very crafty. That usually gets a lot of attention, but as you can see, it's one small part, and there's a lot more areas of skills that we're concerned with. There's some key issues, we believe, highest priority issues for sector skills that impact all of those kind of subject areas. Rather than saying, for example, the key issue, there's a lack of pargeters, actually they're wider issues. So one of which is there's lack of capacity to train in the sector, both with employers and potentially with training providers, and that needs building up. There's also issues around perception. So for example, conservation is seen by a lot of people as being only for the elite. There's very limited vocational routes in and through sector occupations. Archaeology is another one, seen as a graduate entry profession, but we're not paid in line with other graduate entry roles. There's issues with progression. There's no heritage construction vocational qualifications above a level 3. So it's tied into perception issues there, not being seen on a par with something like conservation. And similarly, there's issues with progression in other areas. All of these are actually impacted by the lack of diversity in the workforce as well. So it's a very white middle class workforce. So in terms of priority actions, this is kind of the tip of the iceberg, and there's no quick fix that'll sort everything. But at Historic England, we developed a very, very simple 3-tier model that's holistic in its approach, and we think that'll start to see sustained change. We believe the model's applicable to all areas of the sector. It focuses on developing work-based learning routes, vocational routes into and through these professions, and asks people considering initiatives to consider progression into the next tier. Importantly, it's based on evidence. The Centre for Economics and Business Research found a work-based learning approach would best alleviate sector skills gaps, and the Heritage Lottery Fund's evaluation of the Skills for the Future programme, for example, 2009 to 2013, showed that around 75% of trainees who'd been through those work-based learning traineeships found employment in the sector or continued training. Historic England's own workplace learning programmes showed that even better outcomes, with 80% of participants working in the sector at the end of their traineeship. So that's why we think work-based learning is the key. This is the model. It's got some examples of different types of intervention you could take at each tier. But to summarise the tiers, the first tier 1 is preparing for work in the heritage sector. So it's about taster opportunities, preparation for working in heritage occupations, things like work experience, things like T-level industry placements. The second tier is about entering the sector workforce. So you combine employment and training opportunities for those at the start of their careers. So things like apprenticeships or graduate placements, which people who've gone down the university route. And the third tier is about sustaining the sector workforce. So it's about developing more specialist skills, increasing capacity and capability, and developing future leaders. And the whole point is to think about these tiers in tandem. So think about how you move people from one into the other. What's really important is the bit in the middle, which says learner mentoring training. We think this is central to everything because it's about supporting organizations so they know how to support someone at early stages of their career. And if you haven't ever taken on an early careers person in your organization, or if your viewpoint of early careers is a graduate student, and then suddenly you're asked to take on an apprentice who has no experience, it's a very different kind of environment you need to provide for that person. So that's why it's central. I'm going to have a look at a few quick case studies of how we at Historic England have been trying to implement the model. And hopefully then open it up to you guys to see what your thoughts are, how it would work in your area of the heritage sector, and see where we go from there. So the first very brief case study is the Historic Environment Advice Assistant Apprenticeship. This was developed by what's called a Trailblazer, a group of employers, training providers, professional bodies, and was the first ever apprenticeship in this area of historic environment advice ever created. In fact, it's one of the first apprenticeships in the heritage sector ever to be used. This was launched as an opportunity in 2019 with the first ever cohort starting then. It provided a real new entry route into the sector, into this kind of work. And what was really important is applicable to both new recruits and upskillers, people who were already perhaps in the sector looking to train up in a particular area, or coming from somewhere like a planning background and looking to train up in the historic environment. Our involvement with this has been at two elements. We've been an employer of apprentices, so we had most of the first cohort were employed by us, also as a supporting training provider. So we've been working with Strode College to deliver the taught element of this. And just for those of you who don't know, an apprenticeship is a job with training. So you spend 80% of your time working on the job, learning the job, and 20% of your time doing formal training. Outcomes so far, well, actually, really proud and really surprised that the first ever program won an award, the Association of Colleges Beacon Award for Real World Learning. And that first cohort have now all finished. So the overall pass rate was 89%, and that is actually just one person unfortunately didn't pass their endpoint assessment. But 50% of them received a distinction in their endpoint assessment. And more importantly to me, that the second cohort has now began, and they're not mostly employed by Historic England, they're actually mostly employed by other organisations in the sector. So it's really good to see that working and actually showing that, yes, it is a new route. The fact that it's continued and other people have taken up, it is a new route. What are the challenges with this? Well, the key one is the question of what's next for those kind of graduates. And as I say, they've just finished that. So it's something I want to be monitoring to see if it really makes an impact. Does it help them in their career? Does it help them start a career in heritage? The second case study is our Kickstart Gateway. So the Kickstart scheme provides funding to create 6-month work placements for 16 to 24-year-olds on universal credit at risk of long-term unemployment. As a gateway organisation, we enable sector organisations to access the funding. We provide oversight and quality control of their placements, and we also coordinate a programme of wraparound training and mentoring. So this scheme is helping to individuals both prepare for work in the sector, but also enter the sector because they're on a 6-month job placement. Outcomes so far, well, there's 32 sector employers involved who wouldn't have been able to offer this kind of placement beforehand. And as of February, 75 placements have been undertaken. Placements can start up to end of March, so we'll see what the final figure is. 25% of them have immediately gone into further work. Again, when the scheme's finished, it'd be really great to see if that figure improves and what the figures are like after, say, 6 months. And also, it's invested about £400,000 of government funding directly into heritage sector organisations. Particular challenge with this one, who's actually taking up these opportunities? So the scheme was primarily aimed at kind of young people who were looking for work, hadn't been in work, weren't necessarily going down an academic route. But we've certainly found with our gateway that a lot, in fact, the majority of people who have taken up the opportunities are recent graduates who found themselves unemployed. So that's a real challenge and something to consider of, is it reaching the target market, or is actually, if it's not, is that an issue? And finally, the big one, the Hamish Ogston Foundation Heritage Building Skills Programme. This is a programme that we've been running, which has £4.3 million of investment from a private philanthropist to develop heritage, craft and trade skills training at each tier of our model. The key point, though, is that we're trying to mainstream heritage into it rather than creating more niche training programs. So the tier 1 placements are for students who are on full-time construction courses like MVQs or like T-level courses. They get time to spend placement with a heritage firm. The tier 2 are apprenticeships in mainstream standards like bricklaying, carpentry and joinery, plastering, roofing, but they're actually hosted with firms that consider themselves heritage construction firms and only really primarily deal with heritage buildings. And then the tier 3s are 6 to 12-month placements for experienced construction workers who want to learn a heritage specialism, and they've got the potential to complete an MVQ in heritage skills. It's got a framework agreement with a network of training providers, and it also is going to help improve the condition of heritage risk sites in the north of England. So it's all kind of tied in together. Outcomes so far, we've got our first cohort of 8 apprentices recruited. We've got our first cohort of tier 3 placements being recruited. And what's really exciting is there's a summer school in development with all the tiers will come together and work together on a heritage at risk site. Challenges with this, the potential difficulties for individuals to move between tiers. As I say, that's a key thing of our model for people to consider how you move between tiers. This is a funded project and it's a 5-year project. And if an apprenticeship takes 3 years, then there's difficulty for, say, someone to come in at a tier 1, move to an apprenticeship and then go to a tier 3 in the context of a funded program. So that's something to consider as well. So again, just to remind you of the model, the prepare, the enter, the sustain, and the idea of career pathways through that model. And what I want to leave you with is some questions. What do you think of the model? How Historic England have been applying it? Would it work in your part of the cultural and heritage sector? And what do you think are the challenges to implementing it? And I'd love to be able to discuss those with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much to all the speakers for a brilliant presentation. There have been quickly over to the Q&A. We haven't got much time, sadly, so I can ask all the speakers to keep the answers as short as possible. I know it's really hard. We've had some brilliant questions, but one of the questions we've had about qualifications to Errol, the question goes, given that there are moves across the museum sector to try and remove the need for an expensive MA as an entry requirement, why did you choose the MA path as the next step for the new museum school alumni?
Thank you. That's a great question. Well, the reason why we chose to go down this path was the consultation that we did with the trainees, the 130 trainees that we've put through Skills for the Future. We said to them, what would you like us, what would you find most supportive? And the top request that came back was postgraduate qualifications. The reason that they gave that was that they do not feel that they had progressed in their careers since doing the diploma with us, the Cultural Heritage Diploma. And so they feel that a master's degree would give them the confidence and also the qualifications to apply for more senior roles. So it was something that actually came from the trainees themselves.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. And a quick question for Phil. How have you bridged the continuing gap between traineeships, programs like this, and employers and the number of entry-level job opportunities?
Well, that is exactly the challenges, I think. And the point I wanted to make was that that's still the work that needs to be done. And so keeping on doing this kind of thing is why it's important to bridge those gaps and get employers on board. And the thing with the model we're trying to implement is that it relies on existing frameworks, existing structures. It's not about creating another new fantastic traineeship scheme. It's about embedding that into existing programs and existing structures so it can be sustainable and it can create those pathways.
Okay, thank you. And this, I'm going to direct this towards the creative cultural skills speakers. What was the most important learning you can share to ensure workplaces are a welcoming and supportive environment for trainees?
My viewpoint is listening. That's the most important thing, is listen to the people who are coming in.
Any other takers?
I think yes, just listening, as Di said, and just making that your spaces as welcoming and open as possible, because sometimes a lot of cultural heritage sites can seem a bit of, oh, I'm not sure I'd be welcome in there, or I'm not sure that I would fit in there because I don't know, enough about museums and that. So it's just trying to appeal to a broader spectrum of people as possible.
Thank you very much for that. Does anybody else want to add anything?
I was just going to say that listening to the speakers, when Di's example was really good. It was about how to prepare the workplace in the first place before people came, and that. Thank you. You applied my model. Thank you very much. But the central bit is about that kind of what I call kind of learning mentoring training. But it's about preparing the existing workforces to actually accept people and not go down the traditional path and not think there's only one way to do things. And it's a big piece of work, and it's not something that's ever going to be fixed quickly. It's going to be a long time before that's fixed, but we've got to keep on doing it.
Thank you for that. Errol, we just got one more question for you. You mentioned you used a distance learning model. I wonder if you could share more about challenges to keep learners engaged and any tools you found useful.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Our collaboration with University of Leicester is partly based on their experience of doing this. They've been doing this for years. It's a really good museum studies course, and there are challenges with people being remote, but they've just got a really good system of supporting the students, having one-to-one tutorials and occasional get-togethers actually, in Leicester itself. So people are not remote all the time. And this has been particularly valuable because of the aftermath of the pandemic. We still, things are not completely back to normal. So this model has worked really well. And so far, the students that started in September, they've all been having a great time, as far as I can tell. So yeah, it's working really well. And it also enables people to work whilst they're doing the course, the MA. So it's a good model. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Now, sadly, we do have to wrap up as we are out of time, but thank you to all the speakers, and thank you to you for joining us. We do have 5 more sessions today, so please do join us for those. So yeah, thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you.